But this was always going to be difficult because the book's ending is problematic. I mean, even for the fans, it's not action-packed. It's told from different characters' point of view, and it doesn't have what could be described as a cinematic final confrontation.
No, it's all discursive.
Yeah. On the other hand, you can't change the story, because one of the things that the fans have done is to, they love the books, and they have kind of wielded quite a lot of power, which is that the films have to adhere. There is certain, room for manoeuvre, but not that much. Now, I think they came up with a solution, which at the screening that I saw, and I went to the premiere, so bear in mind it's a supportive audience. It's the people who want to be there. The solution that they came up with was greeted with laughter and cheers. And funnily enough, those seem to be the two touchstones of Breaking Dawn Part 2. I mean, it's much more camp and much more silly than any of the previous installments, and it doesn't just flirt with ridiculousness, it positively marries it and has its child in the shape of Renesmee and the strange, baby CGI'd face thing. And there is, if you want to laugh at it, an awful lot to laugh at, although I think some of it is quite knowing, not all of it intentionally. It also has, more than any of the other movies, has a lot more posing, a lot more people standing around, in the uniforms, even if that uniform will be a leather, Indian costume in which most of you is completely exposed, but you appear to be standing around in freezing snow.
Well, they're vampires, so you say
no, exactly. So they don't feel the cold. Although actually, that particular character, the question, whereas before Pattinson's character Edward was referred to as the Hare, now everyone seems to have spent an awful lot of time in hair and makeup before going out to do anything. Okay, so if you want to laugh, there's loads of that stuff to laugh at. Although actually, funnily enough, that is the area in which it most resembles Star Wars. The kind of the characters, dressed and hair and made up and walking, that sort of thing. The difference for me is this. I mean, I remember being at the Phantom Menace screening when I felt that what Star Wars had done was let down the fans. I was there in the Breaking Dawn screening, in which I felt that what the movie was doing was not letting down the fans. It is not the best movie for me. I still think the best movie is Eclipse. But when you could, and although funnily enough, this has been better reviewed than many of the other films. I was reading a thing that said, the Metacritic score, whatever, says it rating at 65 or 70%, whereas the other films were getting 10 or 15%. There's a very interesting article by Kate Muir in the Times today in which she discusses whether or not Bella is a feminist icon. And there's also a very good piece...
and decides that she is.
Decides she is. And there's a very good piece in Empire Online by Helen O'Hara talking about the impact that the movies have had in terms of changing the demographic of who gets to define what a hit movie can be, and talking about the way in which it has done something for female audiences. And I think all those things, I agree with. What you get in this film is you do get blood-curdling action. You do get full-on, rip-roaring, head-ripping, romping.
The head-snapping is unbelievable.
Yeah, you get genuinely earth-shattering stuff. You also get Michael Sheen doing... you get...
He's
Michael,
the star of the film.
He doing the kind of the full-on camp, sub-Vatican. There is a moment in the film in which Michael Sheen laughs, and it is... You just go... I bet he didn't tell anybody he was going to do that beforehand, as Kristen Stewart was saying in that thing. And that laugh is perfectly pitched because there is a sense of ridiculous. There's no two ways about it. There is a sense of ridiculous and a sense of silliness in this that isn't there in some of the other films. I think, for example, it isn't there in Eclipse. But it does fit for the ending. And I mean, Kenneth Williams is basically being the Pope in space, or, vampire Pope or whatever it is, and he's doing it really well. Also, you get the other things which I've liked about the series, which is you get the display of, the male nudity as well. I mean, there is a scene in it in which Jacob starts to strip while explaining to Bella's father that the world is not quite how he thought it was. And they understand all the, the homoerotic stuff that's going on in there, and it's playful. It is playful. It's done in a playful way. If you hate Twilight, this ain't going to make any difference. You'll carry on hating it, and fine, go ahead. If you like it and get it, it requires you to be on board with the series. It doesn't do any setting up the backstory stuff. But the best thing about it is, for all those people who felt that Bella was moany and inert, because it begins with her opening her eyes exactly where Breaking Dawn Part 1 said. She's the full-on head-ripping vampire. She's the strongest thing in the... She is, in many ways, the cinematic descendant of Ripley, that she is, mother, daughter, wife, warrior, all those things, and she's the centre of it. She's the narrative. She's driving it. I mean, she is what the series was always building up to. People complaining about it always being about her in a reactive role. Not in this, it isn't. So yes, there's much to ridicule. Yes, there's much to sneer at. Go ahead. You know what? Go ahead. I don't think it's the best movie, but I thought it was a really enjoyable romp.
Mark, yeah, I had a ball. I mean, it is clearly nonsense, and the Irish vampires.
Oh yes, they are
hilarious.
They are hilarious.
They're clearly peasants from the bog, and
yes,
they have to be dressed appropriately, and they don't quite say begorra, but frankly,
it comes very
they
close.
Probably should.